The gravel crunched under Emily Harper's boots like a forgotten song, sharp and haunting, as she stepped out of her car in the humid Virginia night. The air clung to her skin, heavy with the scent of magnolias and secrets. She clutched an invitation so tightly her knuckles whitened, her name absent from the sender's line. It was Travis, her old college friend, who'd slipped her the invite, not her sister, Lauren. That spoke volumes. The Harper estate loomed before her, unchanged in 15 years, sprawling white columns, ivy-draped brick, and the faint glow of lanterns flickering like ghosts. Emily smoothed her navy blazer, her breath catching longer than she intended. 15 years since her family erased her. No goodbye, no explanation, just a locked door and a lie that she'd run off. Tonight, she was back, uninvited, at Lauren's 30th birthday gala. The front door swung open, and Travis greeted her with his lopsided grin and a hug that felt like home. You made it, he said, his voice warm enough to crack her armor. He didn't know the storm he'd unleashed by bringing her here. Stepping inside, the world hit her like a tidal wave, jazz floating from a live band. The clink of champagne flutes. And a crowd of faces, some familiar, some strangers, all older now. Richmond's elite, doctors, tech moguls, old family friends, mingled under chandeliers. Their laughter a polished veneer over whispered gossip. Emily's eyes found her mother, Catherine Harper, first. Her silver blonde hair was swept into an elegant updo, her face a masterclass in southern poise and calculated detachment. Catherine's gaze skimmed over Emily, pausing just long enough to register her presence before sliding away. Travis's guest. She purred to a cluster of biotech execs nearby, her smile sharp as a blade. Something in neural tech. I hear. No name. No, my daughter. Emily's jaw tightened, but she nodded, playing the part. She'd had 15 years to steel herself for this. She wasn't here for apologies. She was here to be seen. The ballroom pulsed with energy. A slideshow looping on a massive screen. Lauren as a gap-toothed kid. Lauren at Stanford. Lauren in a lab coat, grinning like she'd cracked the code to the universe. Then, a family photo from their old porch, Emily's teenage self cropped out. Her hand still dangling in the frame like a ghost. Whispers drifted from the crowd. She looks familiar. Isn't that the founder of Neuropulse? Emily didn't flinch. She crossed to the bar, ordered a seltzer, and let the cold glass anchor her. From the corner, she watched Lauren glide through the room, radiant in a cream silk gown. Her laugh a weapon, polished, untouchable, a lie. They didn't know Emily yet. But they would. Her father, Richard Harper, stood by a marble fireplace, his scowl cutting through the haze. His eyes locked on her, heavy with warning. Don't ruin this. As if this night, this house, this family had ever been about anyone but Lauren. Emily's chest tightened, but she held his gaze, unflinching. She wasn't 17 anymore, begging for answers when her college fund vanished and her dorm key stopped working. She was 32 now, CEO of a neural tech startup. And she'd clawed her way up from nothing. The air shifted as Emily slipped into a quieter lounge, the party's hum fading to a murmur. She needed a moment to breathe, to escape the performance, not hers. Theirs. From here, she could see the gala unfold like a scripted drama. Near the dessert table, guests raved about Lauren's Neuralink algorithm, a breakthrough in brain-computer interfaces. Emily's lips twitched. That tech was born in a dive bar's sticky booth, scribbled on coasters while she worked night shifts at a free clinic and studied neuroscience textbooks under flickering lights. They'd only seen the glossy patent, never the grit behind it. Her gaze drifted to Travis, who was fumbling with his phone, handing it to a guest who'd asked to borrow it. He'd grabbed Catherine's phone from her clutch instead, scrolling through contacts with casual ease until his thumb froze. His brow furrowed, then lifted. Emily knew that look. He'd seen something. He leaned toward a caterer, voice low. Why's she got a contact labeled, unknown caller, with a note? Ignore. Toxic. The caterer chuckled, muttering about crazy exes. Travis didn't laugh. His eyes flicked to Emily. Not accusing, but searching, like he'd just found a crack in a perfect facade. She sipped her seltzer, the citrus sting grounding her. Her pulse stayed steady. She'd come ready for this. Whether it happened tonight or not. The music softened, and a voice boomed from the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, let's raise a glass to the woman of the hour, Lauren Harper. Applause erupted. Emily lingered near a buffet. Half-shadowed, her drink untouched. Lauren stepped into the spotlight. Glowing, her gown catching the light like a campaign ad. Travis stood beside her, his smile tighter than before. Catherine and Richard flanked the stage, their faces sculpted for adoration. I'm thrilled to share a project close to my heart. Lauren began, clicking a remote. Neuralink, revolutionizing neural recovery. Emily didn't blink. She didn't move. She just listened. The slide flashed, empowering healing through real-time neural mapping. Word for word, the tagline Emily had pitched at a San Francisco Tech Summit 3 years ago. The visuals were sleeker, but the core, her core, screamed through every pixel. Lauren's voice carried on, claiming the tech as her own, while Richard nodded like he'd raised a prodigy and Catherine dabbed her eyes for effect. Inside, Emily burned, but her face stayed blank. Lauren hadn't just stolen code. She'd stolen Emily's nights, her sweat, her voice, and packaged it for applause. Across the room, Travis's gaze found her, his head tilted. Doubt flickered in his eyes like a spark in dry grass. Then, a murmur from the crowd. Didn't Emily Harper publish on this first? A neuroscientist whispered to his colleague. Lauren's smile faltered, her finger jabbing the remote to skip slides. Emily saw it. Travis saw it. Lauren hadn't expected anyone to remember. She'd banked on Emily's absence. Her silence. But Emily was here, standing in the flesh, and the truth was starting to claw its way out. She stepped through French doors onto the back patio, the spring chill brushing her skin like a warning. The gala's laughter faded, replaced by the rustle of oak leaves and the distant hum of a string quartet. She needed air, space to think. Then she heard it, small sneakers pounding stone. Mom, her son, Caleb, 8 years old and all elbows in his Avengers tee, sprinted across the patio, slamming into her arms. Emily crouched, hugging him tightly, his warmth the only truth that mattered. You made it, she whispered, holding on too long. Her husband, Marcus, followed, his eyes scanning hers with quiet strength. Caleb wanted to see the science party, he said. A half smile breaking the tension. A voice cut through. Cute kid. Travis had followed her outside, a bourbon in hand, his tie loose. That searching look still lingered. Caleb pointed toward the ballroom. That's Aunt Lauren. Mom showed me her picture. She went to Stanford like Mom. But she didn't finish, right? The night froze. Emily's smile tightened. Marcus's hand found her shoulder. Travis's glass paused mid-sip. Behind him, 2 guests exchanged glances. Wait. Lauren said she was an only child. One muttered. Didn't she claim Neuralink was all hers? Another added. Voice sharp. The space between Emily and Travis shrank, not in distance, but in truth. He didn't ask questions. He didn't need to. The timeline, the tech, the lies, they were unraveling. And Caleb's innocent words had just lit the fuse. Emily looked at her son, now chasing fireflies by the koi pond, humming to himself, unaware he'd just cracked open a decade of deceit. The truth, she thought, has a way of sneaking past the gatekeepers. Especially when it's wearing Spider-Man sneakers. The chandelier above the Harper Estates ballroom cast a golden glow. But the air was electric with something sharper, truth, clawing its way through years of lies. Emily Harper stood near the buffet, her seltzer untouched, her navy blazer a quiet armor against the storm she'd ignited. The gala for her sister Lauren's 30th birthday had been a flawless performance until now. But the script was unraveling. And Emily was no longer a ghost in the margins. Lauren stood center stage, her cream silk gown shimmering as she clicked through her Neuralink presentation. Her voice smooth with practiced charm. When I developed Neuralink, she said, I wanted to redefine neural recovery, faster, smarter, safer. The crowd murmured approval, biotech execs nodding like they were witnessing genius. Emily's pulse stayed steady, but inside, a fire roared. Those words were hers. spoken at a San Francisco summit 3 years ago. The tech was hers, forged in sleepless nights, scribbled on coasters and dive bars while she juggled clinic shifts and student loans. Lauren hadn't just stolen her work, she'd stolen her life. Then it happened. A whisper, soft but lethal, cut through the applause. Wasn't Neuralink pioneered by Emily Harper? A neuroscientist in a pinstripe suit leaned toward his colleague. Brow furrowed, heads turned. Lauren's smile froze, her finger jabbing the remote to skip slides. But the damage was done. Emily caught the flicker of panic in her sister's eyes. A crack in the untouchable facade. Travis, Lauren's husband, stood beside her, his jaw tight, his gaze darting to Emily. He'd seen the truth in Catherine's phone, a contact labeled, unknown caller. Marked, ignore, toxic. He'd heard Caleb, Emily's son, call Lauren, Aunt Lauren. The pieces were falling into place. And Travis was no longer a bystander. Lauren recovered, her voice pitching higher. Neuralink was a collaborative effort. She blurted, clutching the remote like a lifeline. Years ago, I worked with others. The lie hung in the air, flimsy and desperate. Travis shook his head, slow and deliberate, his eyes narrowing. No, Lauren, he said, loud enough for the front row to hear. You said your sister vanished. You said she dropped out. Cut ties, left nothing behind. He pulled out his phone, scrolling with purpose. But I just searched Neuralink's predictive model. Guess whose name comes up first? Emily Harper. White paper, 2021. Word for word. Your speech. The room inhaled sharply. A doctor in the back whispered. That paper won at Northwestern. She was the keynote. Another voice. Sharper. Lauren always said she was an only child. Lauren's mouth opened, but no sound came. Emily didn't move, didn't speak. She didn't need to. When lies are screamed long enough, truth only needs a whisper to burn them down. Travis stepped closer to Lauren, his voice low but cutting. I believed you, he said, his bourbon glass abandoned on a table. I stood by you while you built this empire. But it's not yours. You built it on her work. Her name. He slid his wedding band off, the metal glinting as he placed it in Lauren's trembling hand. You didn't just lie to me. You built our life on her ashes. Lauren gasped, her voice cracking. Travis, please. You don't know the whole story. She turned to their parents, Richard and Catherine, standing front and center, their faces carved for admiration now crumbling. Dad, tell them it wasn't just me. Richard's jaw clenched, his arms crossed like a fortress. Catherine's lips parted, but her eyes were hollow, her poise collapsing into something gray and brittle. This is your mess, Lauren, she said, voice barely above a whisper. Not ours. Lauren staggered, as if the ground had vanished beneath her. The crowd parted, their whispers swelling into a hum of shock and realization. Emily could have stayed, watched Lauren scramble to rewrite the narrative. She was always good at rewriting. Instead, she picked up her clutch from a side table, her movements deliberate, calm. Marcus, her husband, waited by the door, his presence a quiet anchor. She nodded once, and they stepped toward the exit. Lauren's voice broke through, desperate. Emily, please. She reached out, her fingers brushing the air. I didn't mean to take everything. I was just surviving. Emily paused, glancing sideways. We were all surviving, she said, her voice steady, slicing through the noise. I just didn't do it by erasing someone else. She kept walking, the crowd parting like curtains. No one daring to stop her. Not Richard, not Catherine, not even the guests, who now stared like they'd witnessed a myth come to life. Outside, the Virginia night was cool, the air sharp enough to clear her lungs. Emily reached the porch. Marcus and Caleb close behind. The weight of 15 years lifted, not vengeance, not triumph, but space. Space to breathe, to rebuild. She hadn't burned the Harper legacy down. It was never built right to begin with. 2 weeks later, Emily sat at her desk in her Richmond home. Sunlight streaming through the windows. Caleb's laughter echoed from the backyard, where he was chasing fireflies with Marcus. A manila envelope sat on her desk, postmarked from Lauren's new address. Inside, a card with a handwritten note. You were never the problem. I couldn't compete with who you are. Half apology, half performance. Emily read it once, then slid it into a drawer labeled, closed. Lauren's voicemail came next, her voice shaky, pleading. Emily deleted it before it finished. She wasn't angry, just done. That afternoon, she joined a Zoom call with lawyers and grant coordinators, signing paperwork for the Harper STEM Scholars Fund, 20 full-ride scholarships for displaced students. No essays, no family references, just merit and need. She clicked submit, closed her laptop, and felt the world shift. Later, she found Caleb in the garden, kneeling beside a row of marigolds, his small fingers buried in the soil. Some plants don't grow right next to others, she said, crouching beside him. He looked up, eyes bright. Like people? She smiled, brushing dirt from his cheek. Exactly. Some roots you're given, others you choose. Looking back, Emily saw it clearly. This wasn't about forgiveness from those who'd erased her. It was about forgiving herself, for staying silent too long, for carrying shame that was never hers, for thinking family meant swallowing pain to keep the peace. She'd lost years proving she was worthy of love that should have been unconditional. But here's what she'd learned. You don't owe silence to belong. You don't need to shrink to matter. And you can rebuild, not from what they gave you, but from what they tried to take. So, if you're watching this, if you've ever been erased, unheard, or underestimated, hear this. Your story matters. You matter. Have you ever had to walk away from blood to feel free? Does silence hold a family together? Or does truth set it free? Drop a comment. Share your city, your story. If this hit home, leave a 1 below. If it didn't, tell me why. I want to hear it. Subscribe, hit that bell, and join me for more stories like this. Raw, real, rooted in truth. This isn't just storytelling, it's healing.